Russian drones flood Ukrainian skies. August 12, 2025. On the tense eastern front near Zaporizhzhia, Russia has launched an unprecedented offensive. 180 drones, 120 T-90 tanks, and 1,500 elite infantrymen march toward 3 Ukrainian cities. Their mission: to break through defenses, seize territory, and claim a swift victory before sunrise. Moscow believes the offensive is unstoppable. Little do they know, they are hurtling straight into one of the deadliest traps in modern warfare. Above, Ukrainian surveillance drones beam live images every 8 seconds. Below, in the fields, sharp spikes, hundreds of bomb craters and mines lurk, waiting to swallow tanks. Along the ridge, Bodana howitzers are locked, guided by GPS to within 2 meters. On the ground, Oplot tanks and motorcycle assault teams prepare for a counterattack. Will the spike traps prove their effectiveness? Will the Russian core be trapped? Will the Ukrainian counterattack plan work against the Russian external response formation? Let me explore the truth. On the night of August 12, 2025, the frontier of eastern Ukraine did not fall silent. Instead, it trembled under the weight of something new, something unseen. In the hours before dawn, hundreds of Russian troops crossed the border not as battalions, but as shadows. They came in groups of 2 to 5, scattered across farmland and villages, slipping through riverbeds and tree lines. Their task was not to hold territory, but to unsettle it, to cut wires, sabotage defenses, and strike from behind once the main offensive began. It was a tactic designed to break Ukraine from the inside out. But the real terror arrived at 6:40 a.m., when the sky itself came alive. From 3 directions, Zaporizhzhia, Pokrovsk, and Novopavlivka, Russia unleashed 180 drones in a single coordinated wave. Some carried high-resolution optics, feeding every trench line and bunker into Russian command screens in real time. The rest carried explosives, each one programmed to dive with surgical precision into whatever target their operators chose. The first explosions were deafening. Apartment blocks, grain silos, and hospitals were struck without hesitation. A swarm of suicide drones turned an entire residential street into a burning crater. In Zaporizhzhia, a drone slammed into a bus carrying evacuees, killing 23 civilians in seconds. By the time the third wave screamed overhead, Ukraine's emergency networks had already logged more than 200 civilian casualties, most of them elderly and children. For Russia, this was meant to be the softening blow, a storm of steel locusts clearing the path for what was to come. For Ukraine, it was a glimpse into a nightmare. And yet, unknown to Moscow, beneath the soil and behind the smoke, Ukraine had already prepared an answer that would turn the next phase of Russia's assault into chaos. By 7:10 a.m., the thunder of engines swallowed the echoes of the drone strikes. From 3 separate axes, Russia unleashed its armored might. 120 main battle tanks, steel beasts weighing over 45 tons each, advanced in columns so tight they shook the very earth beneath them. Their cannons did not discriminate. Shells ripped through bridges, schools, and even crowded markets. In Pokrovsk, a single barrage reduced a block of homes to rubble in less than a minute, leaving dozens of civilians buried alive. Behind the armor came the lifeblood of Moscow's offensive: 150 military trucks, packed with nearly 1,500 elite infantry troops. They moved fast, weapons ready, expecting to encounter only shattered defenses and retreating Ukrainian soldiers. Russian commanders believed the drone swarms had already crippled everything in their path. Confidence turned into recklessness. In one chilling order, a battalion leader authorized tanks to fire into any building taller than 2 stories, convinced they housed enemy observers. By the time the third column reached the outskirts of Novopavlivka, over 320 civilian casualties had been recorded, and entire neighborhoods were ablaze. The scale was staggering. Analysts later estimated that in just 40 minutes, Russia had poured the equivalent of $500 million worth of armor and manpower into the Ukrainian front. Moscow believed it was delivering a decisive blow, the kind of shock assault that would collapse resistance before the world could react. But hidden beneath farmland and village roads lay a secret prepared with meticulous care. The steel avalanche believed it was unstoppable. In truth, it was rolling headlong into a carefully laid death trap that had been waiting for this very moment. Before the Russian army enters the death trap, let me know you are watching from the world, and please support us by using the job and subscribing to the channel. Now let's see how the trap works. As the Russian columns thundered deeper into Ukrainian territory, confidence turned into overextension. Their tanks rolled across fields and village roads that appeared quiet, untouched by war. But beneath the soil, the landscape had been reshaped into a weapon. For weeks, engineers of Ukraine's 93rd Mechanized Brigade worked night after night, carving a death zone into the countryside. At 7:23 a.m., the first Russian T-90 reached a shallow ridge west of Zaporizhzhia. Its tracks collapsed the earth beneath it, revealing not solid ground but a concealed pit nearly 20 feet deep. Within seconds, the tank plummeted, slamming into a bed of hidden anti-tank mines. The explosion tore through its hull, hurling its turret 35 feet into the air before it landed in flames. This was no accident. Across 3 miles of farmland, Ukraine had prepared dozens of such traps, each designed to cripple armored vehicles instantly. Some pits were laced with explosives. Others were lined with steel spikes, designed to shred tracks and disable crews. Interspersed between them were smaller man-traps, narrow pits filled with sharpened stakes aimed skyward. Russian infantrymen, rushing to dismount and regroup, fell into them with horrifying precision, their screams swallowed by the smoke. Within the first 6 minutes, no fewer than 11 Russian tanks had been destroyed or immobilized without a single Ukrainian shot fired. Panic spread through the columns. Radio chatter erupted with confusion. Some units demanding orders to pull back, others insisting they press forward. But retreat was impossible. The safe lanes left open were deliberate illusions, guiding Russian armor directly into kill zones. And then, just as chaos reached its peak, Ukraine revealed the second layer of the trap. From concealed positions, an armored line stirred to life, their cannons primed for the decisive blow. Don't leave yet. This is really the most important part of the trap. By 7:05 a.m., the once proud Russian spearhead was no longer a formation but a scattering of broken machines and terrified men. Tank crews abandoned their vehicles, infantry scrambled from burning trucks, and officers shouted contradictory orders over jammed comms. The pitfall fields and precision strikes had torn the attack in half. Now came the final act: pursuit and annihilation. From concealed staging grounds, hundreds of Ukrainian motorcycle units roared into the open. These were not civilian bikes, but lightweight combat machines modified for war. Armored side panels, thermal scopes fixed to handlebars, and mounts for grenade launchers or machine guns. Their advantage was speed. Able to cross rough farmland at over 70 miles per hour, they surged after the fleeing Russians, weaving between wrecks and smoke plumes. Russian infantry who thought they had found a path of escape suddenly found motorcycles closing in from all directions, spraying suppressive fire and hurling grenades into ditches where troops tried to hide. Meanwhile, Ukraine had not forgotten the infiltration squads. Before the main assault, Moscow had inserted dozens of small units, each 2 to 5 soldiers, to slip past defenses and strike from behind. But in the chaos of the failed offensive, their mission became a death sentence. Ukrainian reconnaissance drones, already saturating the skies, tracked their heat signatures as they tried to regroup in abandoned barns, irrigation ditches, or village houses. Precision-guided mortars fell on their coordinates, one after another. In Novopavlivka alone, 11 infiltration teams were wiped out within 20 minutes, their attempted ambushes reduced to craters and shattered rifles. By 7:20 a.m., the battlefield had become a killing ground with no escape. Russian survivors who clustered around damaged vehicles were encircled by oplot tanks that advanced relentlessly, cannons leveled. Some units attempted to wave white claws in surrender, but artillery fire from Ukraine's Bodana batteries cut off their retreat before any organized capitulation could take place. Casualties mounted with staggering speed. In just 40 minutes of sustained fighting, Ukraine had destroyed or disabled nearly 70 armored vehicles and neutralized over 600 Russian troops, either killed, captured, or incapacitated. Motorcycle detachments alone accounted for more than 150 prisoners, hunted down in open fields as they fled. The infiltration troops, once seen as a clever Russian tactic to sow confusion, had been turned into easy targets under constant aerial surveillance. As smoke columns rose across Zaporizhia's outskirts, Ukrainian commanders relayed a chillingly simple message over secure channels. The enemy is broken. Press forward. The Russian offensive, meant to secure 3 cities before breakfast, had instead bled out on Ukrainian soil before it even crossed the first defensive belt, and still the morning had not yet reached its deadliest hour. By 7:45 a.m., the battlefield was no longer a fight. It was a graveyard. What Russia had launched as a bold strike with 180 drones, 120 tanks, and 1,500 elite infantry was shattered in less than 90 minutes. Satellite imagery captured the shocking aftermath. A corridor of destruction stretching nearly 3.4 miles, littered with twisted steel and burning wreckage. Fields that hours earlier were silent farmland were now scarred with over 200 separate craters, each marking where armor or infantry had been swallowed alive. The cost to Moscow was staggering. Out of the 120 tanks that crossed into Ukraine, 42 were reduced to smoking husks, 23 disabled and abandoned, their crews fled or dead. Of the 150 military trucks, more than 80 were destroyed, many incinerated with their cargo of soldiers still inside. Ukrainian estimates confirmed over 1,050 Russian casualties in the span of just 85 minutes. 610 killed, 290 wounded, and 150 captured. To put it into perspective, an entire regiment's combat strength had been erased faster than it would take to play a single game of football. The infiltration tactic that was supposed to tip the balance fared no better. At least 37 Russian infiltration squads, each 2 to 5 men, had slipped into Ukraine overnight. By dawn, 31 of those units were wiped out completely, the remaining 6 scattered and captured. Not a single infiltrator accomplished their mission. For the Kremlin, the timing was humiliating. Putin had banked on a clean victory to announce territorial gains ahead of his scheduled meeting with Donald Trump. Instead, he faced headlines of the worst single-day battlefield loss for Russian forces since the start of the war. Intelligence confirmed that 3 Russian generals were placed under immediate investigation. One allegedly arrested while attempting to flee Moscow in the early hours after the defeat. Yet, amid the carnage, one image pierced through the statistics. In the ruins near Novopavlivka, a Ukrainian soldier was photographed offering a water flask to a barely conscious Russian teenager whose face was scorched by fire. The boy was 19. The picture spread globally within hours, reminding the world that behind every figure, 610 dead, 290 wounded, 150 captured, were human lives abruptly consumed by war. Military analysts across NATO quickly labeled the ambush a doctrinal earthquake. The blending of old-world traps, pits, spikes, camouflage, with 21st century precision drones and artillery was unlike anything documented in modern warfare. It was not raw firepower, but foresight, engineering, and coordination that shattered Russia's assault. The numbers proved it. Ukraine had spent less than $20 million in mines, drones, and artillery shells to dismantle a Russian assault force worth over $750 million in equipment and manpower. For Ukraine, this was more than survival. It was proof. Proof that patience and preparation could overturn brute force, that technology paired with ingenuity could turn farmland into a fortress, and that even against overwhelming numbers, victory was possible. By 8 o'clock a.m., the Russian offensive of August 12, 2025, ended in silence. Over 1,000 Russian lives, 200 vehicles, and $750 million of war material had been erased in less than the time it takes to finish breakfast. And from that silence, the world was reminded of a truth that statistics cannot erase. Real power is not in the weapons you unleash, but in the wisdom, courage, and humanity of those who stand to defend. The Battle of August 12, 2025 will be remembered not for its length, but for its clarity. In just 85 minutes, Russia's grand offensive, armed with 180 drones, 120 tanks, and 1,500 elite troops, collapsed into fire and silence. Ukraine's defenders, outnumbered and outgunned on paper, turned farmland into fortresses, roads into death traps, and patience into a weapon sharper than any missile. The numbers were shocking. Over 1,000 Russian casualties, more than 80 destroyed trucks, 42 tanks reduced to burning wrecks, and 31 infiltration squads wiped out in minutes. What Moscow envisioned as a lightning conquest became the single most devastating ambush of the war. But beyond the statistics lay a deeper truth. Brute force without foresight is nothing more than chaos wrapped in steel. For Ukraine, this victory was not only a matter of survival, it was a message to Russia, to NATO, and to the watching world that strategy, ingenuity, and resolve can dismantle even the most imposing of offensives. And for every destroyed tank and intercepted drone, one image lingered strongest: a Ukrainian soldier offering water to a wounded Russian teenager, proof that even in the fire of war, humanity endures. When future generals write their manuals and historians study this war, the lesson of that morning will echo. True power is not in how loud you strike, but in how wisely you wait, how precisely you act, and how firmly you hold to your cause. If you found this story powerful, please support the channel with a like and subscription. It helps us bring you more history and analysis that matter.